It's about why older women stop loving their husbands. Not because they're cold, but because they've been unseen for too long. These are the subtle daily lessons about presence, respect, exhaustion, and desire that slip through unnoticed until love starts packing its bags. And part 6, oh, you don't want to miss part 6. It's about personal awakening, when a woman reclaims her soul from the sock drawer and starts asking, who am I really? It's fierce, freeing, and possibly the key to both losing and saving love. So like, subscribe, and help us reach 1,000 subscribers, because the more we grow, the more healing truths we can offer this beautiful aging world. Let's begin. Part 1. Who am I without the dishes? When growth outpaces the marriage, you ever look in the mirror and think, wait, who is that? It's not just the gray hair or the laugh lines you swore you didn't have last week. It's something deeper, something quieter, like a whisper from your soul going, hey, remember me? Welcome to the wild, wonderful world of personal growth in later life. Or as I like to call it, spiritual puberty. Except now, instead of acne and boy bands, you're dealing with boundaries and yoga mats. Here's what no one tells you about aging. Eventually, the roles you've played, wife, mother, caretaker, cruise director of the family's emotional chaos, start to feel a little tight, like wearing pants from the 90s. They technically fit, but breathing's a problem. Take Maria. Devoted wife, stellar mom, part-time CFO of a household that runs on Costco and miracles. She spent 25 years making sure everyone had a clean towel and a lunchbox that didn't leak. And now, the kids are grown, the house is quiet, and one morning, Maria looks at her husband, who's doing exactly what he's always done, and thinks, I'm not sure this is enough anymore. Not because she doesn't love him, but because she's changing, growing. Craving something she can't quite name. Freedom, maybe, or stillness, or just a room where no one asks her where the batteries are. In Buddhist terms, this is the awakening of the self beyond the role. It's when the conditioned self, the one shaped by expectations and routines, starts dissolving, and the true self begins tapping on the window like, hey, you home? And it's exhilarating, also terrifying. Because now you're not just asking what's for dinner, you're asking, what do I want? And for many women, they haven't asked that question in decades. Here's the rub. Sometimes that growth doesn't sync with the marriage. Her inner world is blooming. Meditation, art, hiking, maybe a little flirtation with Italian pottery. Meanwhile, her husband's still watching reruns and thinking everything's fine because she hasn't thrown a chair. But growth is quiet at first. It starts as restlessness. Then comes resentment. Then one day, she's at a book club talking about a novel character's awakening, and she starts crying into her chamomile. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't about blame. Many men are growing too, but if they're not doing it together, if there's no curiosity, no shared reflection, she might start to feel like she's outgrowing the container they built together. And that's a lonely kind of expansion, but also a holy one. Ram Dass used to say we're all just walking each other home. And sometimes walking each other home means recognizing when the other person is growing, even if you don't fully understand it yet. So if you're a woman who feels like she's shedding her old skin, you're not crazy. You're waking up. And if you're a man watching your partner go through this and feeling confused, don't try to fix it. Just sit beside her. Ask her what she's discovering. Be her witness. Because growth doesn't mean the end of love, but it does mean love has to stretch. Make space. Get curious. Learn a few new dance steps. And if you're willing, that growth, however messy, however unexpected, can lead you somewhere even more beautiful than where you started. Back to yourself and back to each other. Just wiser, freer, and maybe slightly more interested in pottery. Part 2, the quiet unraveling, how time changes what we expect from love. You know, in the early years of love, everything is charming. He leaves his socks in the middle of the living room? Adorable. He sings off-key in the shower? Endearing. He burns the toast and blames the toaster? Hilarious. Fast forward 30 years, the socks are now evidence in a trial you're holding in your head. The off-key singing? An offense against God and man. The toast? Still burned, and you're still the one buying the toaster. Welcome to what I like to call the aging remix of romantic expectations. Same tune, different lyrics. You see, when we fall in love with a story. He's strong, she's patient. We'll build a life together. Grow old, drink tea, watch sunsets, maybe argue about which doctor to trust, but still, tea and sunsets. But life has this funny habit of not following the brochure. Over time, the story changes. We all grow, hopefully. But here's the thing most couples don't realize until one of them is halfway to an emotional exit. Not everyone grows in the same direction. Some of us go deep, others go wide. Some go nowhere at all, and call it being consistent. Take Ellen and George, for example. Names changed to protect George from internet comments. When Ellen met George, his ambition lit up her world. Now, after 30 years of late nights and unread texts, his ambition feels less like a bonfire and more like a toaster left on overnight. Warm, distant, and kind of dangerous. George still loves her. He really does. He just forgot to update the software. He's still trying to love 60-year-old Ellen the way he loved 30-year-old Ellen. But 60-year-old Ellen has questions. She's spiritually gluten-free now. She meditates. She doesn't want roses. She wants eye contact and someone who loads the dishwasher without prompting. That's the thing about love in long-term marriages. It's a moving target. You have to keep asking each other, who are you now and what do you need? Buddhism has a phrase I love, the only thing constant is change. That includes your partner's needs, your own identity, and, yes, your hairline. And as we get older, our tolerance for emotional junk food gets real low. Women especially begin to feel this sacred tug toward authenticity. It's like a spiritual menopause. No more fake intimacy. No more half-listening. No more pretending that I'm okay just because I've been quiet. She doesn't want fireworks. She wants presence. And not the kind you wrap with a bow. The kind where you actually put your phone down and ask how her soul is doing this week. Without that presence, without evolving the relationship along with the people in it, what once was love becomes habit. And habit, my friend, is a slow death in a colorful cardigan. But here's the good news. There's always good news. I checked. Love doesn't die. It just naps. Sometimes for years. But if you're brave enough to shake it gently, apologize to it, maybe offer it a warm tea and some therapy, it wakes up. So if you're sitting across from someone who used to feel like home and now feels like a polite roommate with acid reflux, don't panic. Just ask, are we still seeing each other? Like, really seeing each other? Because the clock is ticking. And while time may take your knees and your memory, it doesn't have to take your connection. The invitation is always there. Grow together or grow apart. It's really that simple. And trust me, growing together is a lot more fun, especially when you both agree to stop buying white toast. Part 3. The invisible backpack. Why women get tired of carrying it all. Let's talk about emotional backpacks. Now you can't see them, but if you've been in a long-term marriage, I promise you someone's wearing one. And most of the time, it's the wife. See, early in marriage, everything's shared. Or at least that's the dream. We're a team, you say. You do the dishes, I'll do the laundry. You earn the money, I'll raise the kids. We'll meet in the middle and live happily ever after. Cut to 25 years later, and suddenly the middle starts looking a lot like her side of the bed, her side of the house, her calendar, her grocery list, her brain keeping track of birthdays, dentist appointments, and which kid is allergic to gluten this month. That invisible backpack? It's full. Emotional labor, mental load, unspoken responsibility. All shoved in there like old receipts. And you know what? That backpack gets heavy. Let's meet Sandra, lovely woman, mother of 3, married to a man named Bill, who thinks helping out means occasionally emptying the dishwasher and announcing it like he just split the atom. Bill is not a bad man. He loves Sandra. He just doesn't notice the weight she's carrying because, and here's the kicker, she's gotten very good at carrying it silently. But silence isn't peace. Silence is often just a pause before the resentment arrives. You see, when a woman grows older, something wild and wonderful happens. She becomes less interested in being the glue and more interested in being a person, a real one, with dreams, needs, boundaries, and maybe a preference to not do everyone else's emotional homework. There's a Buddhist saying I like: before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. But nowhere does it say, chop everyone's wood and carry everyone's emotional water while they watch TV. So here's the deal. A marriage isn't a magic act where everything balances itself. It's more like a dance. And if one partner keeps leading, spinning, twirling, and carrying the other across the floor, eventually she's going to sit down and say, you know what? My feet hurt. Now, some women get tired and stay silent. Others get tired and get loud. And some quietly pull their love inward, like a turtle pulling into its shell. It's not punishment, it's protection. Because the scariest thing isn't yelling, it's the disengagement. When a woman no longer wants to explain why she's tired, when she stops reminding, stops asking for help, stops caring if you notice, that's when the marriage isn't just strained, it's in spiritual timeout. The antidote? Awareness. Shared effort. A simple, heartfelt, hey, I see how much you're doing. How can I show up better? Revolutionary, I know. If both partners don't renegotiate the terms of responsibility as life evolves, kids grow, parents age, knees creak, the emotional imbalance becomes unbearable. Not because love has died, but because respect and support went missing. So if you're a man watching this wondering, why is she so distant lately? You might want to check that invisible backpack, and maybe carry it with her for a while. Better yet, unpack it together. See what's inside. You might find things you never knew were weighing her down. And if you're the one carrying it, just know this. It's okay to say, this is too much. You're not failing. You're human. And humans aren't meant to haul invisible loads forever. Love is not measured in grand gestures. It's in how we show up daily, to share the weight, to offer presence, and to remember that the dance works best when both partners have their feet on the floor. Part 4. Hug me like you mean it. Touch starvation in long-term love. Let's talk about touch. No, not that kind of touch, though we're not ruling anything out. I'm talking about the simple sacred act of skin meeting skin with no agenda but connection. Now here's something strange. Long-term couples, especially in later life, can go entire weeks without real, intentional physical contact. Sure, maybe a passing pat on the back or a bump in the hallway while both reaching for the coffee mug. But that's not what I mean. I mean the kind of touch that says, I'm still here. I still choose you. Science has a term for the aching absence of this. Touch starvation or skin hunger. And it's real. It's linked to depression, anxiety, stress, loneliness, even immune system suppression. That's right. Not being touched enough can actually make you sick. Now here's the kicker. Most people don't realize they're touch-starved until someone finally reaches out and holds their hand. And suddenly they melt into tears like a soggy grilled cheese. Take Joan and Leonard. Married 42 years, still love each other. But somewhere around year 27, the hugs got shorter. The kisses got perfunctory. And now, Joan's dog gets more affectionate touch than she does. Not because Leonard doesn't care, he just assumed that kind of thing didn't matter anymore. We're older, he told me. She knows I love her. Oh, Leonard, she may know it, but she can't feel it. That's the thing. Touch is how the body remembers love. It's pre-verbal. It bypasses the stories, the resentments, the grocery lists. One warm hand on the back can say more than 30 years of forgotten anniversaries. In Buddhist teachings, we often talk about presence, being here fully with someone. Touch, when done mindfully, becomes a form of meditation, a way to say, I see you, I feel you, and I honor the sacredness of your body, no matter what it looks like now. And believe me, at 70, that matters. Because aging can make the body feel foreign. Stiff joints, sagging skin, surgical scars. Many older women feel less and less desirable, not because they don't deserve love, but because they've been untouched for too long. The silence around their body becomes internalized. I guess I don't need to be held anymore. But oh, how untrue that is. So what do? We relearn the language of touch, not just with lust, but with reverence. A hand on her shoulder while she washes dishes. A few fingers traced along his back while you both watch the news. A long, slow hug, heart pressed to heart, where no one pulls away first. Start small. Start awkward if you must, but start. Make touch a daily prayer. A sacred pause. A way to come home to each other when words fall short. And if you're the one longing for touch but afraid to ask, say this: I think my body misses yours. Not sexually, just soulfully. Could we hold each other more? Let that land. Let it open the door. Because love in older age isn't about grand passion. It's about being felt again in the simplest, most human ways. And touch? It might be the last language we forget. So go ahead, hug each other like your lives depend on it. Because in some ways, they do. Part 5, don't just love me, respect me, or I will spiritually unsubscribe. Let me tell you something that older women know in their bones. You can survive without romance. You can get by with fewer compliments. But you cannot thrive in a relationship where you're not respected. Period. Now, when people hear respect, they think about standing up when someone enters the room or saying please and thank you, which is great. But we're talking about a deeper kind of respect, the kind that says, I see you, I value your voice, I trust your wisdom, and I'm not going to treat you like the emotional janitor of this household. Take Helen and Roy. Married since before the internet, back when microwaves were a novelty and nobody wore sunscreen. For years, Helen handled everything. The kids, the holidays, the emotional crises, the cleaning, the calendar, and Roy's uncanny ability to forget their anniversary. Now that the nest is empty, Helen isn't looking for flowers. She's looking for something far rarer: mutual regard, equal footing. The space to exist as her own full human being, not just the manager of Team Roy. Because as women age, something beautiful and terrifying happens. They stop asking for permission to matter. And if they don't feel respected, oh honey, they don't start yelling. They go quiet. They go inward. They detach with the calm of a woman who has realized she can read her books in peace without someone asking where the mustard is. Now here's the Ramdas part. True love is not clinging, it's spacious. It honors the soul in the other person, not just the role they play in your life. If you treat your partner like a background character in your life movie, like their wisdom, intuition, or needs are secondary, they will eventually stop auditioning for the part. And man, if you're still running on the rule from 1985, it's time for an upgrade. Back then, maybe respect meant letting her pick the curtains. Today, it means asking her opinion and actually listening to it without interrupting or explaining why you already know better. Women don't want a pedestal, they want a partner. Someone who doesn't just say, "Of course I respect you," while scrolling through their phone, but who shows it in the way they make space, listen deeply, and share the work of living. You see, when respect is missing, it's not just the relationship that suffers. It's the spiritual aliveness of the people in it. The soul withers under dismissal, but oh how it blossoms under acknowledgement. Respect looks like saying thank you for the invisible things, taking her seriously when she says she's tired, not making jokes at her expense in front of friends, valuing her emotional labor as actual labor, admitting when you were wrong without the words but you also right after her. Here's a little secret. When you respect a woman, she becomes more radiant. Not because she needs your approval, but because she's not wasting her sacred energy fighting to be seen. So, if you're in a relationship that's feeling distant, ask yourself this simple question. Have I honored her humanity as much as her history with me? Because love may bring people together, but respect is what keeps them side by side, decade after decade, through all the changes, all the sagging and stretching and holy unraveling. And when respect flows both ways, when both souls are cherished equally, that's when marriage becomes not just tolerable, but transformational. Part 6. She doesn't want to leave you, she just wants to feel alive again. It starts quietly, not with slamming doors or divorce papers. No, it starts with something far more dangerous, like signing up for a watercolor class. She says she just wants to try something new. But you can feel it, can't you? That shift. Suddenly she's talking about hiking retreats in Sedona, learning Spanish, maybe even salsa dancing. You smile politely, but somewhere deep in your aging bones, you whisper to yourself, oh no, she's awakening, and you're right. Because here's the thing no one warns you about long-term relationships. At some point, the woman you married, the one who raised the kids, juggled the calendars, laughed at your bad jokes, starts craving something different. Not someone different. Something. Something with soul, with color, with adventure, with her at the center, not just as a role, but as a full-blown, self-possessed human being who's no longer interested in organizing the spice rack of your feelings. And this isn't a midlife crisis. This is a midlife remembering. Buddhists might call it the path of liberation. Ram Dass would say it's when the roles fall away and the soul comes forward, hungry to live without being labeled. You see, after decades of caregiving, accommodating and adapting, many women realize they've got maybe 30 good years left, and they're not spending them folding fitted sheets or arguing about what to watch on Netflix. Take Deborah, wonderful woman, spent 25 years keeping the house running like a Zen monastery with a Costco membership. Then one day, while eating toast and listening to birdsong, she thought, I want to learn how to kayak. Her husband, Frank, blinked. Why? Because Frank? That's the wrong question. The real question is, why not? This desire for newness isn't about escaping the relationship. It's about escaping the numbness that creeps in when life becomes a spreadsheet of responsibilities. It's about touching awe again. It's about remembering the woman who used to sing, paint, dance, or dream before she became mom or honey or what's for dinner. Now, here's the part that catches many husbands off guard. If you're not willing to grow with her, she might grow without you. That doesn't mean she'll leave. It just means she'll stop waiting for your permission to feel alive. And that's where marriages begin to drift. Not from anger, but from unshared curiosity. She's walking barefoot on a new trail. You're still mowing the same lawn. And unless you meet her there, not to control or contain her, but to cheer her on, she might start walking alone. So what can you do? Be curious. Ask her what she's longing for. Encourage her adventures, even if they don't include you. And maybe, just maybe, find your own. Learn to bake sourdough. Take up woodworking. Meditate. Try something that scares you just enough to wake you up. Because here's the secret. The desire for change isn't a threat to the relationship. It's an invitation to evolve it, to grow together in new directions, to fall in love with new parts of each other, to stop assuming you already know everything there is to know about this person who once made your heart race and now just asks if you bought more trash bags. So if the woman you love starts stretching, support her. She's not breaking the marriage. She's breaking the habit of self-forgetting. And if you join her, if you walk beside her into that great mystery of who you're both becoming, well, then love doesn't just endure. It transforms. Part 7. When the fire becomes a flicker, the tender mystery of intimacy after 50. Let's talk about sex, baby. Well, intimacy, actually. But don't get nervous, we're keeping our shoes on for this one. Now here's the truth most older couples won't say out loud, but everyone's thinking. Things in the bedroom change. Sometimes slowly, like a dimmer switch. Other times, like a power outage during a storm. One minute you're flirting in the kitchen, next minute you're arguing over the remote, and suddenly it's been 6 months and the most intimate thing you've done is pass each other the Tums. And hey, it's not your fault. Life gets crowded. Hormones leave the party early. Knees don't bend like they used to. And frankly, exhaustion has a way of killing the mood faster than any awkward comment. But here's what makes it tricky. Intimacy isn't just about bodies, it's about connection. And when that connection frays, when the laughter fades, when you stop reaching for each other, emotionally and physically, something sacred begins to dim. Meet Joanne and Pete. Married 40 years, raised 3 kids, paid off the house. But now, instead of date nights, their evenings are filled with separate recliners and reruns of shows neither of them likes. Joanne once told me, "It's not that I don't love him, I just feel invisible." You see, what she misses isn't just sex. She misses the little things. The flirt, the wink, the surprise back rub that didn't come with a hidden agenda. The sense that she's still wanted, not just tolerated. Now, Pete isn't heartless. He just doesn't realize that absence isn't always physical. It's energetic. And he, like many men, assumed that once you're older, intimacy naturally fizzles out. As if desire had an expiration date somewhere around the first colonoscopy. But let me tell you something radical. Intimacy doesn't have to fade, it just has to evolve. Buddhists speak of beginner's mind, approaching everything as if for the first time. Imagine if we did that with our partners. If we stopped assuming we already know everything about them. If we asked curious questions, made soft gestures, and, this is a big one, listened without trying to fix anything. Because often what a woman longs for isn't a grand gesture, it's the simple act of being noticed. A lingering hug, a gentle, "you're beautiful" on a day when she doesn't feel like it. A kiss on the shoulder that says, "I still choose you." Now look, I get it. Some of you are thinking, but what if the spark just isn't there anymore? There. But here's a little wisdom from the spiritual front lines. Sparks are overrated. What you want is a slow burn. It's not about swinging from chandeliers. It's about learning how to hold each other again, not just with hands, but with awareness. And yes, sometimes that means getting uncomfortable. Having honest conversations about desire, needs, and even disappointment. Because silence around intimacy creates its own kind of loneliness. The kind where you're lying next to someone and still feel 1,000 miles away. And let me be clear, intimacy doesn't always mean sex. It can mean holding hands during a walk, laughing at an old inside joke, or just watching your partner do something mundane and thinking, "God, I'm lucky." But none of that happens by accident. It takes presence, intention, a willingness to be vulnerable, even if that means saying, "Hey, I miss us." So if things feel a little dim in your relationship, don't panic, don't judge, just notice. And start small, a touch, a look, a word. Because sometimes, that's all it takes to light the fire again. And who knows, you might not swing from the chandelier, but you just might dance again in the kitchen. Part 8, the Great Communication Breakdown. When talking turns into avoiding. You know what's harder than folding a fitted sheet? Talking honestly to someone you've lived with for 30 years. Now, I don't mean pass the salt or did you feed the dog? I mean the real stuff. The stuff under the surface. The tangled emotions, the resentment still wearing yoga pants from 2003. The hard truths we've been avoiding like dental cleanings. You'd think after decades together, it would get easier. But in reality, long-term couples are Olympic-level avoiders. We can go entire decades dodging one unresolved issue, circling it like cats around a vacuum cleaner. Let me introduce you to June and Harold, married 37 years. They've survived 4 kids, a mortgage, 2 hernias, and 1 unholy attempt at salsa dancing. But when it comes to communication, they're stuck in a loop. Harold doesn't talk about feelings. June talks about them enough for the whole neighborhood, but only in her head. So instead of saying, "I feel hurt when you ignore me," she slams a cabinet. Harold hears the slam, thinks she's in one of her moods, and goes outside to rearrange the garage for the 6th time this month. And just like that, another moment of connection slips away. See, most couples don't fall apart from one big catastrophe. It's the slow drip, the little wounds, the missed moments, like spiritual termites slowly hollowing out the foundation. In Buddhist psychology, we say that suffering arises from clinging and aversion. We cling to our comfort zones and we avoid discomfort. Communication? Oh, it's uncomfortable. It's messy, vulnerable. You might cry, or worse, you might have to listen. But here's the paradox. The very thing we avoid is the thing that heals us. Now let's not sugarcoat it. Talking doesn't guarantee understanding. I've seen couples who communicate daily about everything except what actually matters. It's like building IKEA furniture with no manual. A lot of pieces left over and someone always ends up on the floor. The real magic happens when both people drop the roles. The fixer, the blamer, the avoider, and speak as two souls. Two tender, aging souls trying to navigate the messy business of loving another human for a lifetime. And here's where it gets spiritual, my friend. Communication isn't just a skill. It's a practice. Just like meditation. You show up, you mess up, you get distracted, you come back. Again and again. And sometimes you get one little moment of clarity that makes all the awkward attempts worth it. So how do we start? Simple. You sit down, you breathe, and you say, "I don't know how to say this well, but I need to say it anyway." You own your part. You listen without correcting. You stop aiming to win and start aiming to understand. Because behind every nagging complaint, every sarcastic jab, every "I'm fine" that clearly isn't, there's usually a scared little heart whispering, "Do you still care about me?" And if you can hear that whisper, beneath the noise, beneath the history, then you're already halfway back to each other. One last thing. Unresolved conflict doesn't mean the relationship is broken. It just means it's calling for attention, like a smoke alarm going off at 3 a.m. It's not fun, but it's trying to save your life. So maybe tonight, instead of rearranging the garage or fuming in silence, you ask, is there anything we've stopped talking about that we really need to? And then just listen. Not to respond, not to fix, but to love. Because in the end, communication isn't about getting it right. It's about being real. And in a world full of noise, being real is the most loving thing you can do. Part 9. Love, money, and the monthly budget. When financial stress steals the spark. You know what's romantic? Security. Not candlelit dinners or spontaneous getaways. Just knowing the bills are paid and nobody's going to steal your identity this month. Seriously. Try relaxing into intimacy when the credit card's maxed out and you're not sure if that weird charge at Giant Pet Palace was yours or some kind of spiritual test. Here's the truth. Love may be free, but marriage costs money. And not just for wedding photos and anniversary gifts. I'm talking about groceries, mortgages, adult children who still need gas money, and, if you're lucky, prescription sunglasses so you can still read the fine print on the electric bill. Take Bob and Anita. Married for 35 years, raised a family, paid off some debts, even managed a cruise once. But now, they spend most of their evenings arguing over which streaming service to cancel and whether or not to get the fancy yogurt. Bob thinks they're fine. We've got a roof and running water. Anita, on the other hand, is up at 3 a.m. Googling how to retire without selling your soul or your house. And that's the thing. Financial stress doesn't just live in the wallet. It lives in the nervous system. It wakes you up at night. It makes you short-tempered. It turns gentle conversations into IRS-level interrogations. In Buddhist terms, money becomes what we call a charged object. Not because of its value, but because of the emotions we attach to it. Fear, shame, control, survival. And in marriage, Those emotions can start showing up in very unfun ways. One partner wants to save, the other wants to feel alive before they die. One is calculating interest rates. The other is ordering an inflatable kayak because it was on sale. And guess what? Neither one is wrong. The deeper issue isn't the spending. It's the misalignment of values and fear levels. That's where the disconnect starts. For women especially, many of whom have juggled caregiving, part-time jobs, aging parents, and enough multitasking to qualify as a tech startup, there's often this underlying question: why am I still the one holding it all together? She's the one remembering when the insurance is due, calling the plumber, budgeting for the holidays, and trying to figure out how to buy gifts without triggering an emotional meltdown. If her husband's answer to all this is, "Don't worry about it, it'll work out," he might think he's being optimistic, but to her it sounds like, "I have the luxury of not thinking about it, but you don't." That gap between stress felt and stress shared can quietly erode the relationship. But there's hope. What if we stopped treating financial planning like a punishment and started treating it like an act of love? Seriously, imagine sitting down, not to criticize, but to co-create. To say, here's what we want for the next chapter of our lives. How do we build that together? Because financial security isn't just about numbers. It's about safety. It's about trust. It's about being able to say, we're a team. And even if the roof leaks and the taxes go up, we're figuring it out, side by side. So if money's been messing with your marriage lately, take a breath. Sit down with a pot of tea and a sense of humor. And remember, you don't have to be rich to be connected. You just have to be real with each other. Because in the end, the goal isn't just financial peace. It's relational peace. The kind that says, no matter what's in the bank, I'm still invested in you. Part 10. Mirror, mirror on the wall. When attraction grows wrinkles. Let's get one thing straight. Gravity always wins. No matter how many serums, rollers, or miracle creams you invest in, eventually everything softens, droops, or shifts south for the winter. And that includes body parts you once proudly displayed in a sundress. But here's the deeper question that creeps in late at night. Does he still see me? Or worse, do I still see myself? Now look, most women don't expect to look 30 at 60. Though we wouldn't mind feeling like we did when we could wear heels without praying afterward. The real issue isn't the body, it's the attention, or rather, the lack of it. Let's visit Carol. She's 68, radiant in a way that doesn't come from skincare, it comes from soul care. But lately, she's been feeling invisible. He used to look at me like I was magic, she says. Now he only looks up when I'm blocking the TV. That's what hurts. Not the wrinkles, not the changing skin, not the added softness around the middle. What hurts is that the light in her eyes is still burning, and no one's stopping to notice. See, attraction doesn't fade because bodies age. It fades because we stop paying attention. We start assuming. We stop complimenting. We fall into habits where we love each other functionally, but not romantically. One day you're flirting in the kitchen, the next you're negotiating over who took the last Tums. And for women, especially as they age, the need to feel seen becomes sacred. This isn't about vanity, it's about vitality. It's about knowing you're still worthy of being admired, desired, cherished. Even when you've traded in your little black dress for orthopedic shoes. Now here's where it gets spiritual. Ram Dass would say, we're not our bodies. We're souls having a human experience. And while that's true, it also helps to feel like your soul still gets a compliment every once in a while. Preferably one that includes the words beautiful, gorgeous, or even just a raised eyebrow across the room. But men, bless them, sometimes don't realize how deeply their quiet drift affects their partner. They think, well, I'm still here, aren't I? As if presence alone is intimacy. But love without attention is like tea without hot water, just leaves in a cup. So let's do some holy reframing. You're not less attractive because you've aged. You're more layered, more textured, more human. The face in the mirror tells stories the 25-year-old you couldn't begin to understand. You've cried, loved, grieved, forgiven. You've held babies, held grief, and held 1,000 meals together with your bare hands. And that body, that aging, miraculous, glorious body, it's carried you through everything. It deserves reverence, not rejection. If your partner has forgotten how to look at you, maybe it's time to gently remind him, not with blame, but with invitation. See me, you can say, not in desperation, but as a gift. And if you're the partner, consider this your nudge. Don't let your gaze grow lazy. Look at her like she's still your favorite poem. Touch her like she's still sacred ground. And speak to her with the kind of appreciation that makes time irrelevant. Because the truth is, attraction isn't about youth, it's about energy. And energy, that spark, that can still dance at any age if you're willing to fan the flame. So the next time she walks past in her robe and slippers, don't just nod. See her, tell her. And if you're lucky, she just might smile in that way that makes you forget the robe entirely. Part 11. Laugh or you'll cry, or both. The Dharma of humor in long-term love. Let me ask you a serious question. When was the last time you really laughed with your partner? Not a polite chuckle. Not a ha-ha during the weather forecast. I mean the kind of laugh that makes your belly shake, your eyes water, and your dentures almost fall out. If it's been a while, don't panic. You're not broken, but you might be overdue for what I like to call spiritual comedy maintenance. Now here's the thing, no one tells you about long-term relationships. Over time, love gets serious. Bills, medications, adult children who still haven't figured out how to defrost a freezer. Suddenly, your relationship becomes a business partnership. Shared logistics, shared doctor visits, shared complaints about fiber. But buried under all that seriousness is something that might just save your marriage, your sanity, and possibly your hippocampus. Laughter. Science backs this up. Laughter increases endorphins, lowers stress hormones, boosts immune function, improves memory and mental flexibility in older adults. Translation: giggling might actually help you remember where you left your keys. In fact, studies show that couples who laugh together, especially during conflict, experience deeper connection and greater emotional resilience. It's like WD-40 for the soul. It helps you unstick from your own stuckness. But here's the spiritual side. Laughter, in the Buddhist sense, is a crack in the ego. It's when your tightly held identity gets loosened, just enough to realize that most of what you're clinging to is kinda ridiculous. You think enlightenment is a mountain of silence and serious robes? Try watching two 70-year-olds argue about how to load the dishwasher while a cat throws up in the background. That's the real path to liberation. Ram Dass used to say, "We're all just being who we think we are until we find out we're not." And laughter? That's how we stumble into that realization without needing a monastery or a spiritual emergency. So what does this mean for you and your longtime partner? It means make room for the ridiculous. Tell bad jokes. Invent nonsense songs while brushing your teeth. Watch a comedy instead of the 5th documentary about bees. Reenact your worst argument using sock puppets. Because when you laugh together, you remember something sacred. Oh yeah, I actually like this person. Not just love them, like them. And after 30, 40, 50 years, that might be the most intimate thing of all. Now, if humor's been missing in your relationship, don't worry. It's not gone. It's just in hibernation. Start small, crack a smile, invite play, be willing to look a little foolish, because foolishness, when wrapped in love, becomes wisdom. And here's the best part. Laughter doesn't just heal the moment. It builds resilience. It says, even when things are hard, we can still find each other through the absurd. So, if all else fails, if the intimacy is quiet, if the communication is sticky, if the routine feels like cement, try laughter. Because a marriage without laughter is like a temple with no bells. Still standing, sure, but missing its music. Conclusion. So here we are, dear friend, on the other side of this tender journey through aging love, quiet awakenings, and the invisible weight older women carry in long-term relationships. What did we uncover? We saw that love doesn't just disappear. It gets tired. It shrinks from silence, from touch withheld, from respect unreturned. We learned that what looks like detachment is often a woman reclaiming her spirit after decades of being everything for everyone but herself. From the early warning signs of emotional drift to the quiet courage of self-discovery in Part 6, from unspoken labor to the holy act of laughter, we've seen that long-term love isn't about perfection. It's about attention, adaptation, and the willingness to grow together, or at least meet each other halfway with a warm hand and a cup of tea. If anything here made you pause, nod, laugh, or whisper, "That's me," then don't let this be the end. Let it be a beginning. Leave us a comment. Share your own experience. Like and subscribe, not just to support this channel, but to help us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep creating content that heals, laughs, and tells the truth, one soul at a time. This is Buddhist wisdom for the elderly, where we don't just grow older, we grow wiser. And sometimes, we even grow funnier. Until next time, walk gently, love deeply, and don't forget to hug someone like you mean it.